So I'm really excited to introduce Sean. Sean is a GrizzlyCorps fellow serving a Shasta Valley Resource Conservation District in Siskiyou County. Sean graduated from Washington State University in 2021 with a major in environmental science. Prior to becoming a GrizzlyCorps fellow, he worked for the Chehalis Tribe's Department of Natural Resources, a prairie restoration technician. So I'm going to pass things over to Sean. You should have the ability to share.
All right. Yeah, thank you for the introduction, Eliza. Hello, everybody. My name is Sean. I was the GrizzlyCorps fellow that was stationed at the Shasta Valley Resource Conservation District. And I'd like to tell you all a little bit about my time there. So first off, just a little introduction to Siskiyou County, where we're located. It's located to the far north of California and has a population size of roughly 44,000 in total. Approximately 60% of the land there is public land owned by the government, and that'll mainly consist of oak woodlands and mixed conifer forests. And the majority of that includes parts from 5 different national forests, which would be the Klamath, Shasta Trinity, Modoc, Six Rivers, and Rogue Siskiyou. When it comes to what most of the land in Siskiyou County is used for, rangelands for livestock take up quite a significant amount of the privately owned land here. Mining operations, though not as prevalent today, have definitely impacted the landscape. And finally, timber harvesting practices from private timber companies is quite prominent here too. Siskiyou County is home to 3 different RCDs. When it comes to our jurisdiction, we mostly focus in areas within the middle of the county. This means that a lot of our work will deal with the surrounding territories of both the Klamath and Shasta. And within these areas, we'll mostly be working with some of our common project partners. This would include the Karuk tribe for any projects that we are doing that happen to be owned by them. U.S. Forest Service, private timber companies, and nonprofits for any work that we do on government-owned lands. Cal Fire and the Quartz Valley Indian Reservation for any firework that happens to happen in the area. And finally, the Siskiyou Land Trust for any projects that happen on their privately owned land. A little background information about the city we're based in. Wairika is the largest city in Siskiyou County, being roughly 10 miles squared in total, and a population size of just under 8,000. The climate there is mostly Mediterranean, meaning that we usually experience mild winters and dry summers. In the surrounding areas, you'll usually find either oak woodlands, mixed conifer forest, or rangelands. And because of this, the surrounding area is usually quite susceptible to wildfire. Some of you may have heard of the McKinley Scott fire that happened just last year, as well as the Badger fire that happened to happen just a few years before that too. And so as you can see, fire resilience is quite important for this place. So that brings us into what the SVRCD here does. And the majority of our projects will focus on roughly 4 different categories. That'll include fuel reduction projects, which deal with reducing vegetation within an area to help improve its fire resilience. Road improvements, which aim to fix road culverts that convey water under the road, and as well as deal with any general repairs that the actual road may need due to erosion or other external factors. Work with the Siskiyou Prescribed Burn Association when it comes to any prescribed fire or wildland firefighting that happens in the area. And finally, watershed monitoring for this will include the analyzation of local waterways to ensure that they're fit for local fish populations or local land usage. When it comes to my responsibilities here, it mainly boiled down to 4 different categories. Inspection reports of contractor work. That's where I try to keep the rest of the RCD up to date with any fuel reduction projects that they may have at the time. Creating informational workshops for the community. Oftentimes we'll try to reach out to local landowners to introduce them to the benefits of that firework may have on their privately owned lands. Creating maps with geographic information systems, and finally training to become a Type 2 wildland firefighter. So when it comes to prescribed burns, everyone working on site must complete the relevant training. Even though I was able to get certified for a Type 2 wildland firefighter this year, unfortunately, the weather here made it really difficult for us to schedule any prescribed burns. So most of the firework that we dealt with this year was usually just simpler pile burns for some of the workshops that we hosted. For my inspection reports, they mostly dealt with projects I had 2 different roles in. The first stage would usually do with monitoring an area and marking the project boundaries. And once we selected a contractor for the work we needed, I would then keep progress reports and take some before and after photos of the areas that were being treated. An example of the first stage would probably be my work with monitoring the McKinney-Scott forest. There we measured the stand density and the fuel loadings, and to mark any areas of interest for field treatments that we want for contractor work. Even though the McKinney fire happened last year, there's still definitely several areas in the forest that still pose a fire hazard to this day. Contractors will usually use specific equipment for their field reductions. As we can see here, this is a fairly common vehicle that they use for that. And on the left, we can see a masticator for brush and small trees for their removal. And to the right, we can see a tree feller for the removal of larger trees. Here we have 2 example projects that I happen to be a part of. The Wairika Ridge Fuel Break was a massification project handled by our contractors, and it involved the depletion of surface fields to create a buffer zone for both Wairika and Hopkinsville. The field reductions for that project officially started in April of this year and are still ongoing to this day. On the right, we can see the Azalea Field Break. That was a field break project along Interstate 5. It involved the removal of brush to decrease the fire threat to both Dunsmuir and Mount Shasta. And even though the fuel reduction part of that ended back in October of last year, today, herbicides are still being applied to prevent regrowth in the area. And that brings us into our third topic of creating informational workshops for the community. Basically, we would outreach to local landowners regarding firework that may be able to help improve their lands. This would usually include information such as how to acquire a burn permit and air district permits, how they can effectively create their own burn piles, and where to check burn day forecasts for the day that they plan to burn. An example of this would probably be an excerpt from our Siskiyou County burn pile resource. This was basically a diagram that details the permitting workflow of for Siskiyou County. Policies for acquiring a burn permit or an air district permit vary from county to county. So it's definitely important for landowners to know the rules that specifically pertain to the county that their private land is on. Here we have another example from our burn workshop pamphlet. This was from one of our in-person workshops that was held in order to share fire knowledge with some of the local landowners, wildland firefighter type 2, and some tribal members in the area as well. This brochure basically deals with relevant resources that an individual would need for legally burning on their private lands. And that brings us into our last topic of the work that involved geographic information systems work.
Sean, your connection's getting a little spotty there. There's a chance we might have lost Sean, but I'm sure he'll pop right back in.
Okay, yeah, that brings us into our last topic about work with geographic information systems. This mostly involves creating maps for contractors, local landowners, and CAL FIRE for either burn projects or project boundaries. A good example of this would probably be the map we made for some privately owned land near Mount Shasta, known as the Jessup property. It details the property burn boundaries by labeling any relevant building structures, wood loading landings, any relevant water sources, etc. And the process that was used to create this was to first to walk the surrounding perimeter and recording our coordinates with Avenza systems. And from there, we could send those files to the PC and further spruce up the boundaries in CalTopo. And finally, we finished the map in ArcMaps to make sure all the labels and scales were conveyed clearly. Overall, I feel my work here accomplished 3 different things. That being improving forest resilience through fuel reductions and burns, educating landowners about the benefits of firework, and finally improving my skills relating to fire and GIS work. In my time here at the RCD, I think that I learned valuable lessons about the work in natural resources. A lot of effort definitely goes into planning all the projects that we're involved in. As seen with our fuel reduction projects, first we have to survey an area to determine if it's a place that we want to acquire a government grant for. And if it is, we'll then have to write a grant proposal that, if accepted, will pay for the contracting work that we need. And after that, we'll have to select the contractor that's well suited for the project that we have in mind. And once that's done, we'll have to make consistent inspection reports about the work that's being done there. And even all that's said and done, some projects may call for even further action post-treatment. As seen with the Azalea field break, that even after the fuel reductions ended, the area still needed to be treated with herbicides to this day. With that, I believe that wraps up my presentation for today. I'd like to thank the folks here at the RCD for all their support and making this welcoming environment. With that, I can answer any comments or questions anyone that may have.
That was so great. Thank you so much, Sean. Yeah, feel free to ask any questions if you have them. Sean, what are you doing after this current term?
Well, yeah, so I signed up for a second year of GrizzlyCorps. I'll be working with the Pala tribe down in San Diego County. So that's very exciting news. I'm happy to learn all about their work there.
Yeah, and we're so excited to have you back. Very great for us. And I know you have quite a few folks that are going to be down in San Diego on our team, and a lot of other second years in the program. Well, you have so much appreciation in the chat. Thanks so much, Sean. This was a really wonderful presentation. I'm going to stop recording now.